Poland is about to conclude its presidency in the Council of the European Union, which came about in unprecedented times. The transatlantic alliance is collapsing. Eurosceptic voices are gaining ground, and the bloc is facing both an existential threat and a moment of truth. Will the European Union evolve into a geopolitical superpower? And what will be Poland's role in it? Stay with me to find out, here on Wider View, directly from ImpactCEE 2025 in Poznań. And I'm your host, Mateusz Mazzini.
Poland joined the European Union in 2004 as part of the Big Bang enlargement. Back then, it was a civilizational milestone for the country and a dream come true for many. But it was a very different Poland joining a very different bloc. Europe was still free from Russian aggression and talks of war were only in history books. Trust in democracy as a system of governance was unshakable and gave a positive outlook for the future. Most of the crises facing the continent today, including mass migration and the rise of the far right, were at best marginal topics. Over 2 decades later, Warsaw found itself at the helm of the Council of the European Union. This position is supposed to take into consideration the interests of the entire community, not just the country itself. That has become more and more challenging in 2025. Despite Russia's continued bombing of Ukrainian cities, there is no unanimity among member states on how to deal with Moscow. Traditional engines of European growth, France and Germany, are thwarted by their internal instabilities. After decades of relying on the American security umbrella, the EU realized it is lacking the potential to rearm itself. But the war in Ukraine and the looming Russian threat are not the only challenges ahead. European populations are aging and shrinking, choking state resources and economies. The impact of climate change is becoming visible and is already felt by many. The green transition remains a controversial issue, with many politicians opposing the EU Green Deal. And there is the problem of American big tech, which has become more and more influential in European elections. Solving all these problems in 6 months would have been impossible, and Poland was not meant to do it alone. It clearly remained loyal to Ukraine and rallied allies to help Kyiv. It led the charge in rearming the eastern flank and tightened its external EU border. But the question of whether it graduated to be among the leaders of Europe still remains unanswered.
Has Poland become not just the center of attention, but also the center of gravity in European politics? What's next for the green transition, now when so many are pushing back against it? And can Europe remain economically competitive on the global scale, and how could Poland chip in? There are no easy answers to all of these questions, but I'm going to pose them nonetheless to my very special guest tonight, directly from ImpactCEE in Poznań. Joining me tonight is Mrs. Elżbieta Bieńkowska, former Deputy Polish Prime Minister and former European Commissioner.
Thanks
Mrs. Bieńkowska,
me.
good evening and welcome to Wider View. I wanted to begin with a question concerning your assessment of the Polish EU presidency. We're in May, almost 5 months into the Polish presidency. Would you say that after all this time, Poland has actually joined the ranks of the most influential voices in European politics?
In my opinion, it happened even before the presidency. It's not the question of the presidency. Presidency has a lot of really detailed legal act or legal questions or issues that should be answered or solved. But I think that for the last 2.5 or 1.5 years, Poland is really in the center of the European Union. Partly, unfortunately, and sadly because of the war behind our border. But generally, as you call it, the center of gravity of Europe is moving to the east. And east, not only Poland, but Poland in this part of Europe is the biggest country. And due to our really impressive economic results and due to this shift of power that happened 1.5 years ago, that really opened eyes of everyone in Europe that Poland is again coming back, because it has to be said that for 8 years we had anti-European government, and this was very much visible. I was there then commissioner, and it was really a huge, I don't want to use the word disappointment, but a huge
shift, perhaps?
Shift. So this 1.5 year, of course, plus Brexit, unfortunately, plus war, made the things completely different. And Poland is really now among those few big member states that really give an impact to everything what is happening.
So let's talk about the Ukrainian question here for a bit. Not just war and Russian aggression, but also the political aspects of it. One of the main priorities of the Polish presidency of the European Union, but also for European Union as a whole, was to bring Ukraine closer to membership. And Minister Sikorski speaks about that quite frequently, that we were hoping to be able to open at least a number of clusters for accession procedure for Kyiv. We were unable to do most of that, mostly because of Hungarian opposition. But should that be considered a failure, or is it just a very
painful
process?
No, it's not a failure, because except Hungary, everybody in the European Union, I mean separately member states, but also European Commission, keep this line. This is the really important priority for all of us. And of course, there's a question of how this way to the full membership will happen, but because we know how long it took for us, for other member states, really to fulfill all of the requirements and to close the chapters. But I think it will be like it will be done like gradually, because definitely this is a priority. And I think also the fact that this is heard everywhere in Europe, and that are that everybody trying to find a way to bypass Hungary in this means that this is important question, and Polish really voice was very much heard, and is very much heard. This is a priority for Europe, definitely.
You're anticipating my next question a little bit, because I wanted to ask about precisely the issue of Hungary and many other internal opposition actors in the European Union, because we see more and more the tendency of creating the coalition of willings, special formats. We saw that with the recent trip to Kiev of the four leaders, including Prime Minister Tusk, but also Keir Starmer from Great Britain. We see more and more a tendency of people trying to go kind of maybe beyond or parallel to European Union structures to create special missions of sorts. Do you think it's beneficial for Poland, or maybe the other way around?
For now, it's beneficial because Poland is in those.
Because we're not being bypassed.
Yes, we are not. We don't need to be bypassed. But this is this question was also raised for many years. How to do it? Even during the 8 years of previous Polish government. Everybody. I was commissioner then, and I heard all of those discussions. What to do? There was no war then. But okay, what to do if you want to do something more, for example, in single market, and one country is saying no, we're on two countries, because then it was Poland and Hungary. So what can we do with this? Whether to create, again, a coalition of willing, which is now focused on war, but then it was on economy, or we should change institutionally, because treaties are very clear in this. We need in some topics, we need unanimity. So this is and I think also discussing the future of or the membership of Ukraine in the EU, we need to really ask a question whether we need institutional change in the European Union. Because
so let's ask that question.
Okay, yeah, sure. One more sentence. Even without this opposition from the Hungary, and even without war, as I remember it internally from the European Commission, it is more and more difficult to get to any solution. among the 27 member states. With Ukraine, very different, also economically, from the rest of Europe, with hopefully Balkans, because I always need to underline this, Balkans, or I mean Serbia, Montenegro, Albania, they should be in the European Union. We wouldn't have such problems now with Serbia, Russia, if they were in the European Union, and they were kept in the corridor for almost 20 years.
So would you then say that it is also in the Polish strategic interest to push for southern enlargement of the European Union?
Yes, definitely, yes. I think comparing Ukraine to Balkans, it's uncomparable. Ukraine is a big, massive country. Balkans are few or several million people. It's not such a power as Ukraine, and I think we lack Balkans in the European Union, and this I think it should have been done much earlier.
But would you say it's an opportunity that's lost for good because of growing Russian influence, because of growing Chinese influence, or is it something that we still can catch up with?
I think European Union, I mean on our side, European Union member states should do their best to have them in the European Union. As Juncker Commission started 10 years ago, it was clearly said, no more enlargement. So, and in that moment, they've been waiting for like 10 years.
In some cases even more.
Another 10 years has passed, and they are still in the same place, So this is really also very discouraging for them, checking those boxes or ticking those boxes and not making any move forward. So I think that we should put it together. I mean, Ukraine and Balkans.
So on that note, I actually wanted to change the tone of our conversation just a little bit and draw on your personal experience. You are the Minister of Development here in Poland. You are the EU Commissioner for Single Market. You know your fair share about economic growth. And we're displaying that to our viewers right now on the screen, the data on defense spending among European NATO member states. We know a good number of them are lagging behind meeting the targets that are required by the North Atlantic Treaty Alliance. But the debate that's going on right now in Europe very often gets framed along the lines of the division between rearming yourself and sacrificing economic growth. So guns or butter. Is this a fair dichotomy? Would you agree with that?
First, it's a very serious discussion that you are starting. I don't think we'll be able to, say everything on this, but
let's try nonetheless.
Yes, let's try. I mean, the first thing we need to, I think, digest or adopt to ourselves is the current situation. We are still in shock that our best friend suddenly is not our best friend anymore. I mean, United States. We also, I think, need to very fairly say and understand that probably in the next 10, 15 years, not longer, we'll have hostile Russia on the eastern border of European Union, and we have less and less probably soldiers because they will be withdrawn from American soldiers from
Europe.
in Europe. This means that the whole order and everything, the whole life but few generations after the Second World War were used to, is not real anymore. This is completely different situation. And this is what everybody now in Europe is discussing, all of the leaders, which, by the way, all of them agree on this, that we need to be able in few years' time, because we do not have much time for now, we need to be able as European Union to protect ourselves. Okay, we lived for 70 years in the ideal world when we were trading, and developing ourselves, but we had umbrella of American army. And this is something we have in mind. But I think there is no contradictory, but the question is, this one which you put, I mean, to what extent we will be, our societies, our people, to what extent we will be able to devote sometimes maybe our economic prosperity to the goal of being to the goal of security and defense. Because now it's very clear that we need to pay more for defense. And of course, that's why some member states, for example, as we were a few years ago, there was a big loan after COVID taken commonly by the European Commission on behalf of the member states. But now there is a discussion, a long discussion. Even I was part of this discussion, being commissioner, whether we should take the same kind of financial instruments, so to have some debt for the defense purposes.
Sector. Mm-hmm.
So this famous expression of sovereign autonomy, which is repeated everywhere in Europe by leaders, means that we need three things, or we need to address three things. First, military weakness, which we have in Europe as European Union. Then industry, we need to reindustrialize, definitely, which for me is not contradictory to green or clean developments. And the third thing, energy. So those three things should be addressed parallelly. But of course, definitely the military weakness is number one of this.
But do you think that Western European societies in particular, not just political leaders, but societies, actually have the awareness of this threat? Because Poland, independent of the government, has been quite a vocal advocate of rearmament. We're spending the most across the continent, but we're worried about other countries.
First, we have our history. Second, we are very close to the war, and we saw it with our own eyes. And this is the biggest question. I think that now it's more and bigger understanding, even in Spain, who are very much opposing. They were very much opposing against bigger, and they have, by the way, one of the lowest
defense spending.
Yeah. But I think that now it really came all the way from Poland. I mean, this understanding from Poland to Spain and Portugal. Definitely France and Germany, they understand it. And this trio, on sometime this format of Weimar Plus or Weimar, it's really it's very much leading voice now in Europe.
But you mentioned yourself, there will be no rearmament if we don't kickstart our European economies. We've got sluggish growth almost everywhere on the continent. I know that Poland has been a success story for the past few years, even during COVID and beyond. But we're facing a growing threat of Trump's tariffs that can further squeeze European economies. What should we do as Poland, as European Union, as the EU under Polish presidency, to counter Trump?
I mean, this is...
or should we even try to counter?
Maybe my favorite subject, or not favorite, because I was commissioner for single market. And on every front, we need to be united. Europe is a big, enormously big economic area. It is economic area of 400 million consumers, bigger than the United States.
And bigger than Russia, most importantly.
And bigger than Russia, okay. With educated people, with a lot of money everywhere, but we are separated, we are fragmented in each and every area, starting from defense, because now defense is fashionable to say that we need to commonly produce or commonly
have joint procurement.
Yes, or commonly procure the capabilities. But this can be seen in each and every area. If you talk about single market, each and every European leader preaches about the single market, how important it is. But as you look at the reality, how it looks, it means that we have like 27 now, without UK, 27 different regimes, plus 28, which is European. This is a European problem. If you ask any economist or any researcher or any academic, why European Union is so much still lagging behind in some sectors, they will say you one thing: because you are not united. You are not united. We are united to the extent it's comfortable for us. I mean, for different member states, and then we don't want to do anything. Now, as we only started to discuss it, or maybe not even started, the green and clean production or industry. And everybody is okay, we are against it because we need to simplify. What we need to simplify? Let's simplify our national regimes. Let's have a European one legislation. This would be much better. But of course, it's probably still the story for the future.
It's very interesting that you've mentioned the lack of European unity as the
Yeah.
main obstacle
Yes.
for further economic growth, because
I'm
there's a
quite
lot
sure
of
about it. I'm quite
you
sure.
seem to be very convinced
Yes.
about that, but I'm going to challenge that just for the sake of the
Yeah.
argument.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a lot of talk, even here at ImpactCEE, that the main reason why Europe, or even Poland for that matter, is lagging behind economically is because we over-regulate, that we have too many procedures, that we love to regulate. That seems to be also in line with Elon Musk's argument. But is this really the reason why we're lagging behind?
Remember that I was for 5 years, I was Polish minister, but then I was European Commission.
Which makes you the
Commissioner,
right person to answer that
which
question.
Which means that I saw how the legislation is being produced in the European Union. 27 member states must agree on everything. They must agree. If they say no, out of those three institutions, European Commission, European Parliament, and European Council, from the perspective of Commissioner who is proposing some legislation, the most powerful is the Council. If the Council, I mean President and Prime Minister, say
Representatives
no,
of the states.
say no,
Yeah.
that's no. Legislation is not, discussed anymore. So this is of whom you are, you are laughing about. Ourselves, our national governments. I think this is. I'm quite sure about it, and this is now this center of gravity again is moved to the defense. But this is the same story. We are losing billions of euros each year, even before the war. Because I started European Defence Fund. Even before the war, we were losing as a European Union, as a European
As Europe as a whole,
as a Europeans, I mean, we were losing billions of euros because each country was producing the same thing in the small amount. If you are united, you have the power of 400 million people. Otherwise, you are starting from half million Malta to 90 million Germany, which doesn't count in the globally on the world map.
But would you would you then be hopeful that perhaps an impulse, a push for further integration could actually come from Poland? Because when you look at Mario Draghi's report on the competitiveness of European Union, there's actually very little space devoted to CEE as a region, but also in Poland. Can we defy the odds here?
Yes, but the conclusions were the same in different reports. You need more single market.
Or capital market union.
This is the part of the single market. This is capital market union, telecoms. Each part, as I said, in each field is the same. From Poland, I was participating several weeks ago in one event of Polish presidency on single market, and I said then, I hope and I pray we will not, exchange the seat with some big member states that were protecting the internal markets, because Poland is now, of course, richer and richer, more and more powerful economically, and hopefully we will be still a leader of this, demolishing those walls between the member states. If we change the seat with, biggest member states that were preaching about the single market, but at the same time protecting their own ones, it will be maybe not disaster, but it will not be
stagnation. Is a very fancy word.
Both for Europe, fancy, yes, stagnation. Both for Europe and for Poland, I think.
Well, a powerful message for more European unity from Mrs. Elżbieta Bieńkowska, former Deputy Prime Minister of Poland, former European Commissioner for Single Market. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for following us directly from ImpactCEE. Next week, we'll broadcast another special episode recorded here in Poznań. With Martin Wolf and Lieke Fries, we will discuss the future of the Transatlantic Alliance. Make sure you're with us next Thursday, and have a good evening.